The sun hung high over Luminara, a city where wealth wore itself proudly in gleaming towers and polished excess. Its midday rays cast a golden sheen across the sprawling lot of Ellien Autos, the flagship dealership in Keanu Reeves' expanding empire, a monument to luxury where Ferraris, Bentleys, and Lamborghinis shimmered like rare jewels under the relentless California sky. If you're excited to hear this story, comment yes below so we know you're still here. Back to the story. Each car, meticulously waxed, reflected the world in its flawless curves, a silent promise of power, prestige, and dreams just out of reach for most. But today, Keanu Reeves did not arrive in a sleek supercar. He pulled into the lot behind the wheel of a modest, dust-streaked SUV. Its faded silver paint and quiet engine were a stark contrast to the opulence around it. He parked at the far end, away from the grand showroom entrance. The decision was deliberate. Today, he wasn't Keanu Reeves, the billionaire entrepreneur, the visionary behind an empire. Today, he was nobody. He stepped out wearing a faded black t-shirt, worn jeans, and a scuffed leather jacket. No watch, no entourage, no hint of the wealth that defined his name. Just boots crunching graphon and a man walking into his own domain, not to be seen, but to see. As he approached the towering glass doors, he caught his reflection, distorted in their polished surface. His dark hair fell slightly over his forehead. His eyes, sharp yet warm, held a quiet intensity. This was what he wanted. Not the polished reports his executives emailed from glossy offices, but the truth, the raw, unfiltered reality of how his empire treated the ones who didn't scream money. The doors hissed open. A wave of cool, conditioned air greeted him, laced with the rich scent of leather and polish. Inside, the showroom unfolded like a cathedral of luxury. Marble floors gleamed under recessed lighting. Sculpted sports cars stood on display like priceless artwork. Laughter and small talk drifted from a cluster of employees gathered near the front desk. Instrumental music floated in the background, so subtle it was almost invisible. Then he stepped inside. The laughter faltered. Eyes shifted. A young salesman, mid-sentence, adjusted his tie with a glance. A woman with a clipboard whispered something, not quite subtle enough. The energy changed imperceptibly to most, but not to him. Keanu had felt this before. Years ago, before the cameras, before the fame, before the name meant something. He walked slowly, hands in his pockets, his easygoing smile a familiar shield against a tide of assumptions. He felt the judgment as if it pressed against his skin. Not harsh, just quietly dismissive. Then came Sarah Johnson, the dealership's manager. Sarah moved with sharp precision. Her tailored navy blazer hugged her frame, heels tapping a rhythm across the marble like a ticking clock. Her clipboard was held like a weapon, notes and figures marching across the page like soldiers in a war plan. Her blonde hair was pulled into a flawless bun. Her green eyes locked onto Keanu like a scanner. "Excuse me," she said, her voice cool, smooth, but cold, like a blade wrapped in silk. "Can I assist you with something?" Keanu met her gaze, his smile never faltering. "Just here to look around," he said, gesturing casually to the rows of high-end machines. His voice was relaxed, but his eyes were measuring everything: the room, the tone, the micro-expressions. Sarah's lips thinned, just barely. Her eyes flicked to his jeans, then back to his face. The moment was short, but it spoke volumes. A flicker of doubt, a quiet dismissal. That same tired equation. No brand name clothes, no value. "Are you shopping for a car?" she asked, still poised, but her tone carried an edge now, too professional, too polite. "Maybe," Keanu replied easily. "Just wanted to see what it's like in here." She gave a tight smile. the kind reserved for tire kickers and time wasters. Behind her, a few salespeople watched with thinly veiled amusement. The billionaire could almost hear their thoughts. Another one who doesn't belong. But they didn't know who he was. Not yet. And that was exactly the point. Sarah asked again, her tone polite but tinged with quiet skepticism, like the question itself was just a formality. Keanu nodded, his smile easy. Unreadable. Something like that, he replied. A pause stretched between them, deliberate and weighted. Sarah's green eyes narrowed ever so slightly. Her lips pursed as she assessed him again, recalibrating what box he might belong in. Well, she said finally, her voice dipping into a tone that was equal parts professionalism and condescension. We cater to a very specific clientele here. Most of our inventory requires pre-qualification. Perhaps I could recommend Sarah, the delivery guy's here, a voice called across the showroom, cutting through the tension like a crack of thunder. It was Ty, a young salesman with a loose tie and an apologetic wave from behind the front desk. Sarah turned her head briefly, but her eyes snapped back to Keanu with laser focus, as if she feared he might wander off and smudge something expensive. Keanu raised an eyebrow, the corner of his mouth twitching with the flicker of amusement. "You're assuming I'm not qualified?" he asked, calm but direct. The question caught Sarah off guard. Her composure faltered for just a heartbeat, a blink too long, but she recovered quickly. Her posture stiffened. "I'm just trying to save you some time," she said, her smile tight in practice. "These vehicles start in the six-figure range. Maybe I can direct you to something." Her voice trailed off, leaving the implication hanging like smoke in the air. Keanu didn't flinch. He simply glanced around the showroom, his gaze lingering on a sleek silver coupe parked nearby. Its aggressive lines and flawless finish caught the light like liquid metal. It was beautiful. A sculpture on wheels, a testament to everything Ellien Autos claimed to represent. He turned back to Sarah, his tone still friendly but edged with purpose. "You're assuming a lot about me, aren't you?" Sarah blinked. The mask slipped again. Just slightly. Annoyance flickered in her eyes before she regained her footing. "I'm just being realistic," she replied. Her voice clipped. "Ellien Autos isn't for everyone. I don't want to waste your time." Keanu's faint smile didn't reach his eyes. Something cold and disappointed lingered just behind it. "That's quite the assumption," he said softly, the words carrying weight, pressing against the glass walls of the pristine showroom. "What would you recommend for someone like me?" Sarah hesitated, clearly thrown, but quickly squared her shoulders. "Maybe something more budget-friendly. I can give you directions to a dealership that specializes in pre-owned vehicles." Keanu met her gaze, unblinking. "Interesting," he said, voice still neutral, but laced with a quiet challenge. "And what makes you so sure I'm not your target customer?" Sarah's smile tightened again. Her fingers clutched her clipboard a little too hard. "I've been doing this a long time," she said, her voice low, almost conspiratorial. "I can tell when someone's out of their depth." Keanu chuckled softly, repeating her words like a reflection. Out of their depth. He let them hang in the air, the tension thickening between them. "Honest. I like that," he added. "How about this? You let me speak to the owner? Think we can make that happen?" Sarah's eyebrows shot up. Her confidence wavered for the first time. "The owner?" she asked, incredulous. "That's not possible. The owner doesn't just drop by for casual visits. They're very busy people." "I'm sure they are," Keanu said with a nod. "But maybe you could give them a call. Let them know I'm here. I think they'd want to meet me." Sarah's jaw clenched. Her grip on the clipboard tightened until her knuckles whitened. She was losing control of the conversation, and she knew it. "I don't think that's necessary," she said briskly. "If you'd like to submit a formal inquiry, I'd be happy to schedule." "Sarah, is there a problem here?" A new voice sliced through the air, A tall man in an impeccable navy suit strode across the showroom, his presence instantly commanding. His dark hair was neatly styled, and his sharp blue eyes flicked between Sarah and Keanu, reading the tension with practiced ease. Sarah's tone shifted instantly, lighter, more professional. "Mr. Thompson, no issue at all," she said quickly, forcing a smile. "I was just assisting this gentleman." The man, Michael Thompson, regional director, turned to Keanu. His expression is unreadable. "And you are—" Keanu smiled faintly and extended a hand. "Keanu Reeves, owner of Ellien Autos." The color drained from Sarah's face. Her clipboard slipped slightly in her grasp. Around them, the floor seemed to go still. The man she tried to dismiss had just reminded everyone who really owned the keys to the empire. The showroom fell silent. Chatter died mid-sentence. Phones were set down. All eyes turned toward the unfolding scene at the center of Ellien Autos. The gleam of luxury cars faded into the background as something far more riveting took the stage. Michael's expression shifted instantly, recognition flashing across his face, followed by a flicker of surprise. He stepped forward, his polished shoes tapping crisply on the tile. "Mr. Reeves," he said, his voice steady but tinged with genuine respect. He extended a hand, which Keanu took in a firm shake. "We weren't expecting you today." Keanu's smile remained, calm and unreadable. But this time there was weight behind it, something quiet but undeniable. "That's the point," he replied evenly. The silence that followed was electric, heavy with tension and dawning realization. A ripple of discomfort moved through the room as employees exchanged uneasy glances. Sarah's throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. Her eyes widened, the color draining from her face. She understood now, but it was too late. Keanu turned back to her, voice calm but edged with undeniable authority. "So, Sarah, still think I'm out of my depth?" Sarah's composure cracked. Her patience, already worn thin, finally gave way. She exhaled sharply and crossed her arms, her voice trembling with frustration. "Look, sir," she said, clearly flustered. "I'm trying to be polite here, but this is getting ridiculous. I have other customers to attend to. If you're serious about buying a car, we can schedule a meeting with one of our sales consultants. Otherwise what?" Keanu asked, his tone cool, calm, final. The words stopped her in her tracks. His voice wasn't raised, but it cut through the air like steel wrapped in silk. The authority behind it was undeniable. Sarah hesitated, visibly shaken, but she pressed on, her voice rising defensively. "Otherwise, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The words dropped like a guillotine blade. The air went still, like the entire showroom was holding its breath. Keanu didn't move. He simply looked at her, unblinking, unwavering. Then, with deliberate ease, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. "All right," he said, scrolling through his contacts. "I'll make the call myself." Sarah frowned, her voice laced with disbelief. "What are you doing?" "Just calling the owner," Keanu replied simply, lifting the phone to his ear. "Shouldn't take long." Around them, employees had stopped pretending to work. They were watching now, drawn to the scene like moths to flame. Even Ty had frozen mid-step, his eyes wide as he watched history write itself in real time. Keanu turned slightly and held up one finger, signaling Sarah to wait. Then he spoke into the phone, his voice calm and measured. "Yeah, it's me. I'm at the dealership. Everything's fine, just a little misunderstanding. Could you let them know I'm here?" He ended the call and slid the phone back into his pocket, his expression unreadable as he turned back to her. "They'll be here shortly." The silence returned, this time heavier, sharper. Sarah fumbled with her clipboard, her hands stiff and jerky. Keanu stood like stone, composed, grounded, unshaken. Whispers circled the room. Some employees exchanged glances. Others pretended to busy themselves with paperwork, but no one could look away. Then, with a soft click, the main door swung open. Michael Thompson re-entered, his navy suit catching the showroom lights. He walked briskly, every step echoing against the polished floors. His expression was warm but commanding, his gaze sweeping across the room before landing on Keanu. A smile broke across his face like sunrise. "Mr. Reeves," he said, his tone filled with admiration. He extended his hand again. "So good to see you." Keanu shook it firmly, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. "Thanks for coming, Michael. I appreciate it." Sarah's clipboard nearly slipped from her grip. Her fingers clenched around it like it was the only thing keeping her standing. Her mouth opened, but no words came. Michael turned to her, his expression shifting from warm to ice. "Sarah," he said, his voice razor sharp. "I see you've already met Mr. Reeves." Sarah's lips parted. I didn't realize." "You didn't realize," Michael interrupted, "that he's the new owner of this dealership." A gasp rippled through the room. Shock. Embarrassment. The weight of the truth settled like concrete. Sarah's face went pale. Her breath caught in her throat. Keanu exhaled gently and raised a hand, cutting through the tension. "It's all right," he said evenly. "I think Sarah and I just got off on the wrong foot." The words were kind, but the message beneath them was unmistakable. He had come to see the truth, and now everyone else could see it too. The words were simple, but their impact was seismic. The employees who had been watching held their breath, waiting to see what would come next. Sarah, who had seemed so certain of herself just moments ago, now looked utterly lost. Her shoulders sagged. Her confidence had shattered. "I'm so sorry," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know." Keanu's gaze remained steady. His expression was unreadable, but the weight in his voice said everything. "Didn't know what?" he asked quietly. "That I could own a place like this, that someone like me might belong here." Sarah's eyes widened. Her breath hitched. "I didn't mean..." Keanu raised a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "It's fine, Sarah." "Really?" He took a slow step forward, lowering his voice, not to hide it, but to make them lean in. The room went still. "But let me ask you something," he said, his tone calm but cutting. "If I hadn't been the owner, would you have treated me any differently? Would you have shown me the same respect you'd give someone who walked in wearing a suit and tie?" Sarah opened her mouth, but no words came. Just silence, the kind that exposed more than any answer ever could. Keanu nodded, as though her silence confirmed what he already knew. Then, without missing a beat, he turned to Michael, his voice cool and composed but carrying unmistakable authority. "Michael, gather everyone in the conference room. I think it's time we had a little chat about how things are run around here." A ripple of unease spread through the staff. Nervous glances were exchanged. Conversations dropped to whispers as the employees slowly filed into the sleek, glass-walled conference room. The space, usually spacious and airy, now felt stifling under the weight of what had just happened. Sarah took a seat near the back. Her usual confidence had vanished, replaced by a quiet stillness. Her fingers curled tightly around her clipboard. She wasn't taking notes. She was barely breathing. At the head of the table, Keanu stood with an easy composure. But behind his calm exterior, there was an intensity that silenced the room. He didn't have to raise his voice. He didn't need to. Michael leaned against the door frame, arms crossed. His expression was unreadable as he scanned the room. The murmurs died the moment Keanu cleared his throat. "Thank you all for joining me on short notice," he began, his tone measured yet firm. "For those of you who don't know, my name is Keanu Reeves, and I'm the new owner of Ellien Autos." A wave of hushed reactions rippled through the room. A few employees stiffened in their seats. Others exchanged embarrassed looks. Sarah sank lower in her chair, her face burning. Keanu continued without pause. I came here today dressed like this for a reason, he said, gesturing to his faded t-shirt and jeans. I wanted to see how this dealership runs when no one knows who I am. I wanted to feel what a real customer might experience walking through those doors. He let that settle, his gaze sweeping across the room. And what I experienced today was disappointing. The air seemed to thicken. The room felt smaller. He didn't look at Sarah directly, but everyone knew who those words were for. I was judged, Keanu said, his voice unwavering. Not by what I knew, not by what I could offer, but by how I looked. He paused. His next words hit harder. And that's not just about me. That's about every single person who walks through those doors, every customer who doesn't fit someone's narrow idea of what a luxury car buyer is supposed to look like. A hand slowly rose near the far end of the table. Keanu nodded. Go ahead. It was Chris Parker, a young sales associate who looked like he wanted to disappear. Mr. Reeves, I think most of us try to treat customers fairly, Chris said nervously. But sometimes it's hard not to make assumptions. Keanu nodded. Thoughtful. I get that, he replied. We all have biases, whether we admit it or not. But here's the thing. He leaned forward slightly, his voice calm but deliberate. It's not enough to try to be fair. We have to fight those assumptions. We have to actively create a space where everyone feels respected, regardless of what they wear, what they look like, or where they come from. A beat of silence passed. The weight of his words hung heavy. This dealership has built a reputation for excellence. He continued, but excellence isn't just about the cars we sell. He looked around, locking eyes with several employees. It's about the experience we provide. He let that sit, final, undeniable. And from now on, that experience changes. This dealership, Keanu continued, his voice steady, is going to be built on respect, inclusivity, and fairness. A ripple of agreement murmured through the staff. Some nodded, others sat silent, but even the wary couldn't deny the truth in his words. Change had come, and it wasn't waiting for permission. Sarah sat motionless, her thoughts racing, her heart pounding. This wasn't just a reprimand. It was a reckoning, a quiet, public shift that would redefine the very culture she'd helped shape. She clutched her clipboard like a lifeline, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Keanu's gaze settled on her. Sarah, he said gently, though his voice carried firmness underneath. I want to give you the opportunity to speak. Is there anything you'd like to say? All eyes turned to her. The weight of their stares crushed her. Her throat tightened, her cheeks flushed with shame. For a moment, it seemed she might say nothing at all. Then finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, she spoke. I made a mistake, she said. Trembling, I misjudged you. And for that, I'm truly sorry. Keanu nodded slowly, his expression unreadable, his silence deliberate. Thank you for saying that, he replied at last. He let the words hang in the air. I hope this experience serves as a reminder, not just for you, but for all of us, because real change begins with accountability. He turned back to the room, his voice calm but resolute. Moving forward, we'll be implementing new training and support programs to ensure Ellien Autos reflects the values I believe in. Every customer deserves to be treated with dignity. No exceptions. His gaze swept across the room, pausing just long enough on each person to ensure they understood this wasn't a suggestion. It was policy. If anyone has an issue with that, Keanu said, now's the time to speak up. Silence followed. But it wasn't the kind that comes from discomfort. It was heavier, dense with understanding, with consequence. Even the hum of the air conditioning seemed to fade. Keanu let the quiet stretch before breaking it himself. Good, he said simply. I'm glad we're all on the same page. A subtle breath of relief swept through the room. The tension had not disappeared. But it had shifted, giving way to something else. Something that felt like purpose. Change isn't easy, Keanu continued, stepping forward and resting his hands on the table. But it's necessary. And this dealership is going to lead by example. He looked around the room at the people, the environment, the legacy he was now responsible for. I didn't come here to humiliate anyone. I came to understand the culture I've inherited and how we can make it better. His eyes flicked back to Sarah. You're an experienced manager, he said, voice softening. I have no doubt you've worked hard to get where you are. But today was a wake-up call. For you. For all of us. Sarah lifted her gaze, meeting his eyes. Her voice was low, but firm with resolve. I understand, she said. I was wrong, and I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Keanu studied her for a long moment, then nodded. I believe in second chances, he said, but accountability comes first. I'll meet with you one-on-one to discuss next steps. For now, let's focus on moving forward. He looked back at the rest of the team, his tone shifting to leadership. We're not just selling cars here, Keanu told them. We're building trust, creating relationships, representing a standard of excellence. If you're on board with that, I'm here to support you every step of the way. This time, the murmurs of agreement were louder, more genuine. Heads nodded, shoulders loosened. Even Michael, still standing at the door, gave a small nod of approval. His arms no longer crossed. A faint smile touched Keanu's lips, not one of victory, but of determination. All right then, he said, let's get back to work. And remember, how we treat people matters more than anything we sell. The staff began to file out, whispering among themselves. The energy in the room completely transformed. A shift had begun, not just in policy, but in spirit. Sarah lingered near the door. Her hands twisted nervously, but her eyes were steady. Then, gathering courage, she stepped forward. Mr. Reeves, she began, her voice low but sincere. I want to thank you for giving me the chance to do better. I won't let you down. Keanu held her gaze, unreadable for a moment. I hope you mean that, Sarah, he said. Actions speak louder than words. But I believe people can change if they're willing to try. She nodded. I am. After a beat, Keanu turned to Michael. Let's set up a full staff meeting for next week, he said. All business now. I want to make sure everyone knows what's expected moving forward. Michael grinned. The respect in his eyes was unmistakable. You got it. As Keanu stepped back into the showroom, his eyes swept over the gleaming cars, their polished surfaces catching the golden light of late afternoon. He had come here to observe quietly, to understand the inner workings of his dealership without the filter of titles or status. But what he discovered was far more profound. It wasn't just a business check-in. It was a moment of reckoning, a raw look at judgment, assumption, and the invisible lines that still shaped human behavior. This visit had revealed something broken, but more importantly, it had sparked the beginning of something better. Because at the end of the day, it was never about the cars. It was about the people. And that, he realized, was worth fighting for. Days later, a moment confirmed the seeds of change were taking root. From a quiet distance, Keanu watched as Sarah, once closed off and guarded, welcomed a customer with warmth and sincerity. The young man wore paint-splattered jeans and a worn hoodie. Sarah didn't flinch. She smiled. She listened. She treated him with the kind of dignity every person deserves. No hesitation, no assumptions. It was the beginning of the cultural shift Keanu had envisioned. Small, but powerful. Proof that transformation was possible. One decision at a time. But the ripple didn't stop there. News of Keanu's undercover visit spread beyond the dealership, carried by word of mouth, social media, and local news. In coffee shops and classrooms, people talked, not about luxury cars, but about kindness, leadership, and bias. Teachers used the story in lesson plans. Community leaders held roundtables, asking, how can we do better? What started as a quiet test had become a movement. Ellien Autos was no longer just a symbol of luxury. It had become a symbol of fairness, of humility, of human decency. And as the world watched, one truth stood above the rest. How we treat others, regardless of their background, has the power to transform more than just a business. It can change an entire community. The story of Keanu at Ellien Autos holds valuable lessons we can all apply. First, challenge your assumptions. When meeting someone new, pause and ask yourself, are you judging based on appearance or character? The world often teaches us to make snap decisions, but growth begins when we learn to see people for who they truly are. Second, lead with respect. Whether you're at work, in school, or simply interacting with strangers, choose to treat every person with dignity. Like Sarah learned, one moment of kindness can make all the difference. Third, embrace accountability. If you realize you've acted unfairly, don't hide. Own it. Apologize. Commit to doing better. Real change doesn't begin with perfection. It begins with honesty. Finally, advocate for fairness. If you see someone being mistreated, speak up. Your courage might be the spark that inspires others to rethink their actions too. These small steps create a ripple effect, making your workplace, community, and relationships stronger and more compassionate. If this story moved you, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder of what real leadership and respect look like. Comment below. How will you apply these lessons in your life? See you in the next video and have a wonderful day.